Well, here's one about the plein air painting process. I get a lot of questions about plein air and the process. This person says, I paint plein air in a loose impressionistic style. I keep hearing painters talk about painting general to specific, but how do you do that painting outdoors when the light keeps changing? We'll try to do this without the light changing on us. Well, there's several points here. One about in plein air when the light keeps changing, and the other about general to specific. If you are working really general to specific and not trying to nail down details from the very beginning, you can adjust to the light changing. Now, one thing I like to do is I like to chase the light. And sometimes if I'm finding a scene that's in a light I really love, what I'll do is I'll set a no tan for that light pattern. And then as the light changes, I'll just stick with the no tan pattern because it doesn't change that much just within about the time that it takes to do a plein air painting. And also, one thing that will help, and this is just a suggestion, don't try to do huge paintings in plein air, and you won't have that problem. Keep the paintings small and let them be studies. Now, I know a lot of people think the goal in a plein air painting should be to do a finished painting. It doesn't have to be. And so if you really want to enjoy the process, maybe doing plein air studies where you're not really trying to complete a painting, but you're capturing everything that you're seeing and you want to include in the painting, and you can use that painting to go into your studio then and do a larger painting that captures what you saw and how you felt about that. So that's what I suggest. Now, when you're in plein air, here's what we mean by general to specific. Don't look at details. Now, a lot of people think they get focused on details. Tree is a tree, it's the grass, the clouds in the sky, how that cloud is shaped. Don't think about that stuff. Don't even look at that. And try not to think. Try to look, observe, and observe according to large spaces and large shapes. Now, when you're painting in plein air, you have that whole world in front of you. You're going to narrow that down to what you're going to include in just a small format. When you have that narrowed down, then look at the big shapes. Now, every photograph we take narrows that down. I didn't take this photograph. I ripped it off Pixabay. But the person that took that photograph narrowed this down. There's stuff going on over here, stuff going on over there. But the person narrowed it down, and this is that person's viewpoint, not mine, and not yours. So, but when you're at your viewpoint, look at just the large shapes, and try first of all just look for two shape divisions. If we're outside, we're probably going to see sky and earth. Now, if you're outside and you have trees that you're looking through, then you might see sky, trees, or you might see sky, earth, and trees. Try to just observe for those two shapes to begin with. And then quickly, this is general. This is as general as you can get. Quickly divide the space into those two shapes as you see them. And here's how I would do that. Now, I like, when I'm painting in plein air, I like to use a little brush to place the images. We call that preliminary drawing, but it's really more just placing images. There's not a whole lot of drawing in it. All right, so I will get just a little bit of Gamsol on this. This is just a little filbert brush. It's a hog bristle, and it's I don't know what size it is. Size 2. a very small one like that. It's really good for placing images. So I will just get a little bit of Gims on the brush and then dip it in just to the edge of some transparent paint. Doesn't matter what color. Get just enough color in there. And now here I go on this side. This kind of divides itself in half. You never want to do that. So I decide, do I want that to be lower? I want this division of earth and sky. I want that to be lower or higher. You make your decision, doesn't matter which. I'm going to say lower. Let's put the emphasis on the sky. So I'll come down from that middle point. You know, there's no rule about measurement. Now, I know people will say, come down 1/3, 2/3. You don't have to. You look at the master painters. Master painters' works have all kinds of spatial divisions. As long as it's not 50-50, which can be kind of ambiguous, it doesn't matter. So, all right, so we'll start there. And then I will say, I'll look at the angle of that and say, how is that large space divided? I'll just do a quick little division. And that's all. Just that. That's as general as I can get. So from this general division, then try just one more division. One more division and try in the earth. Just divide it into distance and up close. Now you can decide yourself. Usually if you're looking way out in a vista, you're seeing some distance like we're seeing here. But if you don't, you can decide that for yourself. What's going to be closest to you? What's going to be between you and where that sky starts? Or between the edge of that and where that sky starts. So if I were going to do that, that is general. You're dividing the whole thing into big, large spaces, shapes. So that's general. And so then, since I brought this down, I might not want to include all of this. I might want to include just about maybe that much. But I certainly don't want that to be an equal division. So I can decide that maybe that the part of those, the trees that we're seeing right there, maybe that begins about right there. Let's make that a little bit darker. And the sky ends up about right there, just like that. And then I look then and see what shape are we creating there. And so then I'll begin to just look at the general shape, the edge of this big shape, not trees, not individual trees, nothing like that. Just what is the big shape that we're seeing in this in this darker area in here. We can include this part or not. But let's look at the upper edge of that and then just sort of create some sort of a placement for that tells us something about those shapes or that shape that we're seeing. Just making 3 shapes is all we need there when you're doing that general to specific division. That's all you need. The next step for general to specific is divided into 2 value areas. We would take what we would call the lightest value area and then more of the next value area. All right, we would call this the lightest value area and then the shadow value area. And so if we take it just in 2 value areas, what I want to do now is very quickly, just do a block in that includes those 2 areas. Now, since the sky here takes so much of that, then what I would do there is to go into just the colors, general colors I'm seeing in that sky. And I would start blocking those in just very generally. And I'll be over here when I do that. A lot of times in a landscape, if I had lots of trees in front or stuff like that, I would do the shadow areas first. But I'm just going to do just what we see as lighter areas, just block in very quick. That's as general as you can get. And so what we'll do there, not trying to get specific about color, I just want that color area. So if I look at this large color area here, I'm seeing those blue grays and the violet grays, blue grays and violet grays, and some blues in there. So I'm not going to try to get specific about that. I'll just reach into that light area there, and I have just load the brush. In fact, I'm going to get a different brush. Let's use this brush. Use the largest brush that largest brush that you have that can get the job done. What I want to do here is I'm simply going to block in. In other words, that means I'm placing the general value areas, the general light value areas. I'm just going to block in. And this time what I'm going to use is a scrubbing motion of just placing color. And this, I'm just trying to get right here kind of a neutral of what I'm seeing there. And what I watch for there, not clouds yet, what I watch for there is which way is that going, and that is going kind of in this direction right here. A little bit too green, so I'm going to throw a little bit of that red violet in there. I have yellow, green, red, violet, and blue. And it doesn't matter what the color, you've got all kinds of tube possibilities that can give you that. Let's see what this is. Oh, that's better. Okay. Let's get that just a little bit more in here. Now, very quickly, I'm just going to very quickly block in here. Block in. I'm still leaning a little towards green. So, get the color right on the palette, and we get the color right. That's better right there. I'm very quickly, very generally, and very quickly. If you're in plein air, if you can imagine, if you're in plein air, you can do this very, very quickly before the light changes. Of course, you know how if the light is changing in the sky, it might get ahead of you, but we get accustomed to that. Let's get this bluer up here. There we go. Just very generally. This is not on thick. We just sort of scrub that in, and very quickly. It goes on very quickly. So I'm going to pull more white in the brush now. Let's add just a little bit of that red violet into the white. You get that very, very light, and pull that white down from my little pile of white up there. Let's see. Yes. Okay. Very gentle. Here we go. Right here. Very gentle. Now see, if you block that in very generally, just very specifically there, I'm just going to go a little bit more red violet right up here over this, and I can go begin to kind of shape that just a little bit. That gets it, just begins to get a little bit more specific when we shape like that. So, but we don't want to try to get specific yet, just very, very general. Now, I see a little area right here of that road that comes about down right here, like that. So I think maybe I'll just sort of throw that in. And let's get that, throw that in. Now I'm going to go into this area. I see it's just a light right in there. And we're going to do the same thing again. Very general block in. That's all. This person asked about general to specific. And so this is what we'll do. Let's get that just a little bit grayer there. I should say a little bit more neutral there. And so we'll just go back and forth between the green, and there we go, the blue-green and the red-violet. A little bit of the blue there. Let's see if there we go. Let me get that just a little bit more like that. Just a little bit more like that. Now, next thing, we begin down to move from that large area to begin to look at the divisions of those smaller areas. What we see in the very, very distance there. Again, very general, but now we're beginning to get it a little bit darker. For what we see in the distance there, just a little bit darker. Not much, but just a little bit darker. That thing keeps trying to go green on me there. And just got to be the master of that. Let's see. Okay, there we go. Very, very general. Very, very general. And we can let that get a little bit more violet. See, I'm getting just a little bit more specific now. Haven't got to the idea of impressionist brush strokes. Now, here's the thing about the impressionistic people. The people like to paint in the loose brush strokes. If you get the general placement first with the colors very generally stated or suggested, then you can move back in with your interpretive strokes, and you'll be able to get that with no problem. Now let's go for the next value up. This area right here, very general. Very general. And so get that just a tiny bit darker, and we'll move right back up in here very general, just throw that in. Very general. It gets a little bit darker as it gets onto the, goes in this direction right here. So just, yeah, a little bit of green in there. All right. And watch the top of the edges as you're doing this. Just watch the top of the edges and let your brush follow it. That's all. Where it gets lighter, you get lighter. Just a little bit, not much. Where it gets lighter, you get lighter. Right in here and in here. Lighter, 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 lighter. All right, so that's that. Now I'm going to rinse the brush really, really good and very generally do the block in for those darker areas. Now, I'm not going to take this to a finished painting. Well, I couldn't. We don't have the time for that. But this person asked about going general specific. Usually when usually when the issue is general to specific, it's because when the person has a question about that, it's because they're too tied up in details. So if you do just the general part in this very quick sort of a scrubbing approach, a very quick placement of shapes, you will find then that you will have nailed the light, you will nail the light pattern, you will have nailed the shadow pattern. Then you can use that as your guide to lay in your more expressive strokes. And let me show you just a little bit of that, but we don't have enough time in these quick tips for me to show you the whole thing. But just enough is all you need. So here we're going to begin to we're going to block in very general. And what I'm looking for here, I'm looking for the shape of that shadow. That's all, just the shape of that shadow area right here. So just you see what I'm doing there? Just allowing the brush to block that shape in. Just that much. That's all. Then we have the shadow shape in front. It's a little bit greener. And we will do the same thing there. It gets a little bit, you see a little bit more, you see more values here, more value differences here than you see there. But what we're doing here is we just are blocking in the general value area. And one thing we need to watch out about corners, try not to let this be an equal division of space between here and here and here and here. We always pay attention to that because that can cause this to isolate off the painting. The corner, if your corners are equal, then that corner just sort of sits over there and stares at the rest of the painting. It doesn't really want to participate. It's very general, very, very general. And then we got some dark shadows here in the front area here, and we'll just sort of place those in very general. Very general. And I'm going to just do that whole area right there and pay attention to that shape. And I think I probably could have done a little bit better job on paying attention to that shape. There we go. Just very, very general, allowing the brush just with a thin layer of paint, and allow the brush to move in that general area. Now that then is a general block in. Oh, I need to get the area back there. So that is a little bit lighter in value area than this area is. So we'll go just a little bit lighter in value and get that little placement done back in there. And let's see, it's right in here. Okay, now I'm paying attention now. Now see, I don't have as much space between here and here as there's there. That's fine, because remember I shrank that thing. In fact, I didn't want that light just going off the edge there, so I'm sort of combining those two areas there. But anyway, let's just do this. Now I'm paying attention to the top edge of that long shape, that long dark shape, and it comes down like that. I pay attention to the bottom edge. It sort of sits down like that, and then it comes down. The top edge comes down and goes up, comes down. You see what we're doing here? Just a very general placement of that value area. And let's see, what else does it do? Okay, every time it comes down, I turn the brush flat because we see that as a straight edge moving in this direction right here. And so we just do that. And now let's go back up here. And all right, so that gets lighter as it gets up into the distance there. Yes, it takes a little bit of violet and kind of gets lighter. As it moves up into this area right in here, it gets lighter. And it gets lighter than that. So you see what the language I'm using here is a value, is the language of value. Color, I haven't said much about color. I'm pretty much just, but we're using the value of the colors we're seeing. That's all. And we're using the shapes we're seeing. And we're paying real close attention to the edges of those shapes. How the edges change of those shapes and their character. Are they fuzzy? Are they straight? Is the edge sharp? Is the edge more blended? Is it more, I have more of a fuzzy characteristic. I get right in here now, and it gets a little bit smaller. The top of that edge kind of pokes up into the sky like that. So you see, if you change your language to the language of, to the visual language, the language of the elements that we're looking at, and the edges, pay close attention. The edges are also part of the language. So if you're paying attention to the language you're using, and you're not calling it what you see, but you're describing to yourself what those edges are doing, then you'll be able to get a very quick block in like this that doesn't describe clouds and trees, but simply lays a foundation so that you can put those in. And we'll make a little bit of an edit here. See? And this is part of what we do as painters. We place, and then we look. We respond to what's here, not trying to make it exactly like it is there. So what I'm seeing here is now this can come up a little bit. You see that edge, that shape comes up a little bit higher. So now we'll just do that. So I'll just move in for a little bit more of that darker green, and I'll pull that up a little higher. And now, if you don't like a shape, change it. I don't like how that just goes straight across right there. So what I'll do is I'll just bring that up, and I'll give it a little bit more of a natural, bushy look. And then it just sort of comes down and it goes behind here like that. So we have the character of that now. So at this point, you can begin to use whatever method you like painting with. If you like the impressionistic method of painting, then use the impressionistic method of painting. If you'd like to be more realistic and more descriptive, then you can do that. Now, I'll just do a little bit more here to show you what I'm talking about. Say, for example, in the sky. So I tend to like my images to be not totally descriptive, but I like the images to have, I like to respond to the kind of image I'm seeing. So there, if I'm looking at that sky area, now here, if I go into the next phase, this is already general, moving towards specific. And when we get it to this stage of setting the shapes, the major shapes, then we can begin to do what I call refinement, where we begin then to define those shapes. And that's what we mean by specific. So specific means, well, the sky area up there is pretty much like I like it, but I would like a little bit more value definition in that cloud. So I would throw a little bit darker value right in here and begin to kind of shape that cloud, or that area of cloud, with a little bit more darker value, and have it to tilt in the direction I'm seeing it going there. And at this point, you see, I can begin to build. Let's get that edge a little bit more blended. At this point, I can begin to build for the kind of images I want to build, I want to respond to. In other words, I can begin to build it now into whatever style my style is. If I want it to be If I like the more realistic style, then that's what I would do. If you like the more impressionistic style, you can begin to respond with that. So and then this is the way we do it. Just take one area at a time. So this needs to be lighter, so we'll make that a little bit lighter right in there. And then it begins to get a little darker. And see, moving along like that, you will find that the painting actually will guide what you do. And so you don't have to fret about the light changing because you still have the information there. By this time, if I were out in plein air, if there's a current in the sky, by this time all those clouds will have changed. But I still have the major pattern and color, and I can begin to shape those by looking at whatever clouds are there. Or if I choose to, I can choose to, whatever clouds appear, I can choose then to begin to create the shapes I'm seeing in those clouds. You see where I'm going here now. So I'm going to stop right here because the point is how to get it general. This person didn't seem to have any problems with specific. Most people don't have problems with specific, but how to get that thing general seems to be an issue. So start with shape. Don't look at what it is. Look at the shapes you're seeing. Find a way to divide it into two shapes and then take one area of each of those shapes, or maybe both will have areas of shape division. But first two, then subdivide. Don't get too carried away with that before you start then placing the colors and the values of those shapes very generally, not trying to make trees or clouds or sky or anything like that, but just get the colors generally placed. Then, once that's there, you can begin to shape your clouds and trees and grass and things like that. It's fun exercise. Give it a try. Be sure to view all of our quick tips. And while you're doing so, subscribe to the channel, click on the bell so you'll always get a notice when we produce a new quick tip, which is every week. And if you have a question, leave it in the comments section and we'll make a quick tip for you. Also, take a trip over to DianneMize.com where I have full-length lessons, downloads, DVDs, lots of other stuff there, some free stuff for you. And while you're there, you can subscribe to the newsletter, and that way you'll always be informed every time we do something new.